Welcome back. Now that Republicans are taking back control of Congress, the repeal of the Affordable Health Care Act seems almost inevitable, raising questions about its replacement. Colin, do you see health care as a right? And what will become of it as the next Congress takes their oath of office?
So that's a very interesting question. I think in an advanced society, access to affordable and efficient health care is a right. I don't think anybody would make an argument that we don't have the right to be taken care of, again, as affordably and efficiently as a system can support as possible. We have a failed healthcare system in this country, and it's been failed for a very long time. Whether the right answer is to go to some single-payer type system, however it's structured, whether it's a privatized system like in the case of France, or whether it's a nationalized system like in the case of Switzerland, the reality is, and Switzerland is a great example, they pay half as much per outcome and get significantly better health care. So I think that the argument should not be framed politically as to whether you support a single-payer system and blah, blah, blah. The argument has to start, or the discussion has to start with the fact, and Obamacare was not a great improvement, incidentally.
Because two parties didn't work together to make it one.
Yes.
They made one party do it.
And that's my point.
Okay.
So that being exactly my point, we have to agree that our health system is fundamentally broken. And then we do need to get together and figure out a way to fix it. And
For everybody.
Yes.
Now, you're younger.
Yes.
I'm the oldest here at the table. I have health care. I have Medicare, and I have my 20% TRICARE for life from the military, from retiring. So I have health care.
Right.
You two guys don't.
I do.
You got it
but
too?
I pay
I've got health care.
But you had to pay for it?
I have to pay part of it.
Okay.
My employer actually
But Medicare you don't
will
have to pay.
for me.
Right.
My employer actually pays for me completely. So all I have to actually pay for is my family.
So how do you both? How do you see this coming together under a new regime to where people have, and how do you take the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare that you want to call it, how do you take the good things there that people want to keep? And if you remember 50-some different times that Congress voted to oust Obamacare, now they'll have the reins. What are they going to do different?
So what I've been reading, and I absolutely love this idea, is instead of making health insurance mandatory, offer tax credits for having health insurance. All right? Now you're using a carrot instead of a stick. I always feel that's the preferred approach when it comes to just about anything. Instead of punishing someone for not having something, which they might not even be able to afford anyway, instead, you give them incentive for having that thing. Great example, I have a family member who actually, he is going to be fined 3% of his income when he files his tax returns here in 2017, because he is right at the level where he wasn't eligible for a discount on health insurance, but at the same time, he couldn't afford to purchase health insurance, because if he would have purchased health insurance, then he would no longer have enough income to pay his bills.
Now, what happens with that individual? He has a catastrophic illness at some point in time. Who should pick up that illness?
Well, what
Who
ends
should
up
pick up that
happening
cost?
is the rest of us who are paying into the system end up paying for it.
Right.
Because the
Is
system
that right?
recovers. No, of course not. And my only issue with the tax credit idea, and I don't necessarily oppose it, is the tax credit that's being offered in any way, shape, or form going to offset the medical costs? So we have to take a step back even further. So arguing about the mechanics of supporting the current system is a failing proposition. We need to go back to the fact that, again, we are paying twice as much for the outcome as anybody else in the developed world who have better outcomes. So the system itself has to be restructured. How you do that exactly, we've created a system through the way that we've treated health insurance in this country to a large degree. So I don't think that the federal government necessarily is the only vehicle of fixing it, but we have so much fraud, so much waste in the medical system, in the medical billing system. You go to the hospital, so perfect example, you have an emergency room visit. You would think, because it's a single organization, that when you pay your copay or whatever it is at the hospital, that would take care of every single organization that you're dealing with. No. you're going to get an additional bill from the emergency room, probably from an organization whose online bill payment doesn't work, or it takes 3 months to fix and have it actually work. And then you'll get a bill from the radiologist or from the phlebotomist or from any other sub-piece. So how much cost goes into all those different little sub-entities of the organization that is the hospital, having their own billing systems, their own collection people, their own everything else? It is a disastrous waste. And that's why we pay a lot for it.
Now,
I think
with what he said, just to follow up on what he said, one key person or group that you let out was the lobbyist. Look at the control that the industry that oversees healthcare has over Congress. How will that ever be dealt with to curb what Colin's talking about?
Well, you know, diapers and politicians should all be changed very often for the same reason. They typically fill up with a bunch of crap. You know, I really think that getting a lot of the politicians out of Congress that are in there right now is going to be one of the key steps on that, because a lot of them are sitting pretty comfortable with their routine donations from, you know, major pharmaceutical companies or healthcare industry or whatever. And they really need a wake-up call to, hey, fix things or we're going to get you out of here. Unfortunately, Congress has a very low approval rating, but a very high re-election rating.
Yep.
We need to fix that in this country.
So now how do we drain the swamp?
There are a couple of competing ideas, some of which would probably not be acceptable to the vast majority of people. But I think that's a whole nother conversation. Look, lobbying and the cancerous effect it has on our political system could lead us into a whole nother 30-minute segment. So we'll stay away from that. The real issue, to Ken's point, however, is the fact that you have 435 people sitting around, and actually 535, who are more interested in their own re-election than there are in standing up for the rights of the people, all the people, not just the people who can make campaign donations, that they're elected to represent.
Yep. Term limits.
Term limits are
time for term limits.
I saw on Facebook the other day there was the 28th Amendment proposed with, you know, and a guy came up and he says, "Oh, you're back to talking about term limits again." I said, "No, I'm not. You know, there's got to be a point in time where things change. Whatever Congress has, we should be able to have as well."
Yes.
So, Colin, you've had the last word. Up next, Fast Five. Stay tuned.